podcast today. We're joined by our two co-hosts, Harvey Castro and Edward Marks. And it seems both of them are in Dallas. And of course, we have our amazing guest today, Mr. Felipe Jarrell. He is known in the industry to be an futurist for AI. He has served at multiple different companies. He's going to do a proper introduction. And we just wanted to start the summer. And by the way, reminded that, I have a 10-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I didn't realize that it is kind of odd that they are at home the whole day. So I have much more human contact in the last 3 days than AI contact, which is actually a breath of fresh air. So as Ed says, keep learning, but also maintain your humanity. So we're going to go ahead and first let Felipe introduce himself, and then we're going to have a casual conversation. And the idea behind it is to regroup one of these things when we have this, 30 years experience guest coming in and not to glued with updates of, I know Gemini 3.5 came out and Claude is 4.8 is coming and, this and that. But the idea is to just step back and understand where the industry is going in the next 10 years. 10 years is probably too much now. I mean, we don't know what the freaking next week is going to look like. But at least we're going to go ahead and get his opinion on how to prepare ourselves. Either you are a hospitalist, as a clinician, as an administrator, as a pharma company expert, Medicare policymaker, whoever you are. I think the idea is to understand how things are changing and how we can adopt to this change, fast-paced change. One of the things that came on New York Times recently, I sent it to you, Harvey and Ed, that humans are not adapted to this fast-paced change. So we're going to talk about all of this. Felipe, again, very grateful that you came online with us as a guest. We're going to bring you again in future because now I realize how amazing work you have done in the past. But why don't you formally introduce to our audience, which, by the way, Ed and Harvey has an amazing audience, and we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you very much, for the kind introduction, but even more for the invitation, because, I love this kind of, very open discussion, not prepared, running with the flow, So my name is Philippe Guerril, as mentioned. I'm French. Again, nobody is perfect, but I worked mainly in Switzerland, so 30 years in Switzerland because I'm living at the border with Switzerland. So I spent 30 years in big corporation. I would say half of it in specialty chemicals and half of it in pharma. So my last job was at Novartis, but I left in 2018 and then I moved in another direction. So during my time, Novartis and even specialty chemicals, I was mainly IT, supply chain, and when I left, I was already an international speaker, many events, but more in technology at that time. So it was time of blockchain, IoT, big data, all that stuff, which I'm not saying is not there anymore, but it become at least, we don't talk less about it, is part of the landscape. Although big data, we could still argue, because big data is still a very hot topic. But then I moved more on the healthcare side, and more as a patient. And it was quite interesting because I said, I talked also early on, and I think that's a time where I met also Harvey in person, about the healthcare metaverse, which is, and it might be an interesting topic, not the healthcare metaverse, but the whole adoption of those technologies, Everything is going quick, but the adoption is still not that quick, So I think we still are facing that issue. As said, I may be older than some of you, but I lived in a time where technology was behind. Technology couldn't deliver what we were needing in the business. Now I think it's the opposite. Technology is quicker, and we are slow in the adoption. So, but as I said, I'm an international speaker. I went to many countries. I'm very proud that some of the countries I did together with Harvey. So I think we were together in Lisbon. We were together in South Africa. Last year we were together in Dubai. So I'm always happy when I can meet people like Harvey. We have, I would say, daily contacts online, but when we can meet in person is something different, So that's maybe the last piece I would like to mention, because, I don't want to make it much longer in terms of introduction and come to the topic, but I'm also a humanist. So that's the point. And people ask me, what does that mean? Digitalization, humanist, or however you call it. And for me, it's basically, I'm a big fan of all those technologies, but that those technologies should serve the human and not the other way around. And I think we have a lot of challenges in that space because, we could even become better human again, because I'm saying again, because I think we lost some of that, in that space. But the risk of not doing it is probably higher than doing that. But I think that's enough for the introduction, and I'm happy to answer more questions. But even I think getting more into the topics and sharing the stage with you guys.
Today, I'm going to start with Ed because Ed had a very similar journey in the sense that his introduction into AI was more about from a patient lens, not to mention, of course, he's a board member of hospitals and systems and everything, but more so his interests peaked with as a patient. And then, so Ed, again, I see your lovely family members on your lap. So thanks for joining as our massive, amazing co-hosts. I'll get you the baton first, and then Harvey and they know each other, so they're gonna collude with us. So let's just push things to our side now.
No, Felipe, it's great to have you as part of Signal and Symptoms, and you bring a great perspective. Yeah, I'm rarely home, and so my dog rarely sees me, and so she was like running around the house, and she's like, "Oh, podcast! I'm gonna jump onto the podcast." And so that's what's going on there. But yeah, someone said something provocative to me earlier this week, and I wanted to get, as a futurist and as a humanist, wanted to get your perspective on it. And they were like, "Hey, AI is a bubble," and after I explored it a little bit with them, I wondered a little bit more about it, and I'd love to get your perspective. Like, are we in a bubble, or are we in a hype cycle at the peak of, you know, uh, over expectations? What's your thought on that whole general concept with AI?
Yeah, so first of all, I think it depends what we call a bubble, because I think there will be definitely changes, it's ongoing, things are going quickly, but it's not going to disappear. I think it's the opposite. It's going to be more and more here. It might even be, I would say, becoming a commodity, because as I said, you see already in many, not just in healthcare, it's part of that. So the only thing when I'm saying where I could argue about the word bubble, there are still too many solutions out there. And I would even argue about the word solutions. Are there really solutions, So again, everybody is using AI, not everybody, the word AI, sorry, but not everybody is having AI. So from that point of view, I can accept that, kind of bubbles, some will disappear. Some smaller bubbles will disappear or being integrated into bigger. So not, although I still believe when I say consolidation, doesn't mean consolidation, to the top 4 or 5. There will still be more. You will still need some kind of. I was on a podcast just 2 days ago in Dubai, where basically we talked about localization. Part of it is global and part is going to be localization. When you travel around the world, and it seems that you are also traveling a lot, you see that it's still not one size fits all. So we should, of course, kind of part of it should be global, but part of it should be localized, starting with the language, especially if you talk about patient, English is not there everywhere. So all that. But again, in that case, AI is not a bubble, because AI will help you in terms of the languages, in terms of literacy also, to talk to the patient and all that, because sorry for my 2 colleagues here, but sometimes when the doctor is talking, it's Chinese for the patient,
Yeah.
Harvey, why don't you answer the same question, given your space, all the other stuff, international experiences and everything, and then especially the word commodity, and I use the word demonetized and intelligence. Demonetized intelligence is insane in my opinion. But anyways, Harvey, answer your lens and then take it away.
So going from Ed's question, are we, or from his friend's question, are we in a bubble? I see it as a cultural shift. I see the point of that. Oh, it's a bubble. We're spending all this money, and we're putting all this things, and it's gonna explode, and nothing's gonna happen. I don't see it that way. In that, I see it growing. The foundation is being built. Cultural awareness is changing. My example is everybody on this call, when they first heard of ChatGPT, they had their own bias and ways of doing AI. And I want everybody out there listening, how do you use AI today? How has it changed from back then? And your mind has shifted, and you see things, and you're doing things. And so in my mind, I see AI has just shifted the way we work, the way we do things, and it's just created this new way of doing things, and it's just a shift.
What is your next question to Felipe, Hari? I have so many questions, and I'm going to hold back for a minute because he's here, so I'm going to ask him.
Well, my question is, I know you and I are in conferences, and the beauty is we're on the other side of the planet, kind of. So you see things differently. So my question is, based on, let's just say, the last 6 months of all the conferences, all the things you're seeing, what has really wowed you? You're like, wow, X concept, or this is coming in the future. What is that you can share with us? Because I know you've seen a lot.
Yeah, so it's different things, and you know, being like you know, also called, you know, futurist and things like that, it's becoming challenging because things are going quicker, you know. So you have also to come more often about the future. And for the moment, I'm still lucky. It seems that I'm going into the right direction in the predictions. But again, things are coming quicker. I don't know if you want completely to jump there, you know, but I know you're also a big fan of those discussions, Harvey. You know, the question about quantum computing. We are already overwhelmed with what AI can do and the speed and all that. We are going to be shocked about the combination of quantum and AI. Because again, AI is still, and Julia, you might be more detailed in that, you know, and answer that. But AI is still, let's say, if I simplify it, you know, let's simplify it, it's still like the human brain, but just quicker and more, you know, but it's still kind of one step after the other, logic and all that. Quantum is going to think differently than a human brain, you know, it's going to revolutionize the stuff. So, as I said, I'm you know, Harvey, no, I'm quite often on the ground. I go to visit clinic, I go to visit hospitals. I want to feel the things, you know. And you might be surprised, you know, last week in Dubai, I went to a real estate friend, you know, who's quite big real estate guy in the UAE, secondary market, you know, and it's the second time they were invited to his staff meeting on the Monday. So really, you see staff meeting, I'm there talking to the 15 agents, and this time the topic was AI, you know, and was very interesting. So some basic stuff, you know, he was maybe partially to answer one of the question of not question, but one of the point of Harvey. He was teaching them how to use ChatGPT. You know, that every agents that are still not using it, but he's telling them, you know, you do something wrong if you're not using, despite the fact that, of course, he's developing a specific AI for his company, something more complex than just, you know, ChatGPT. But he gave them basic stuff to ask Harvey what we do differently, some basic parameters, you know, that you can do, you know, the deeper thinking, the extended version and stuff like that. So there's some basic stuff, which is quick, but the quality of the answer, the things coming back is not the same if you use a different setup. All the discussion, you know, about doing projects and things like that. So it was basically an AI training for a real estate agent. But when we left, he came in the car with me and he asked the driver, you know, to drop him at home. And he said, Philip, in 3 months, I might have my AI solution, you know, I will have to fire people. And, you know, that's the things which sincere, I'm challenging. And I'm not saying it's right, but sometimes we take the quick route. Because I told him, you want to fire some people because they are actually doing what AI can do. But before they had no time to do something that I will not be able to do, you know. And I think, you know, Harvey, know me well. That's my topic always in the medical, in the healthcare field. You know, doctors are busy entering data and all that stuff. And I'm the last one to say we don't need this data. We need more and more data to do, research and all the other stuff. But the doctor should not be the guy who has to enter data. The doctor should be the one that looks into the patient eyes and make the human touch. And in the early days, we had these things from ChatGPT, that patients said that ChatGPT was more empathetic than doctors, and the reality is it's wrong. It is that the doctors are not human anymore. The doctors are becoming robots, and that's the point. You compare robots to robots, then you're going to lose. So we have to reinforce
So
the
true.
human skills, So we have now to concentrate, teach education, which is also not the quickest industry, to concentrate on critical thinking, emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, and all that, because we are on the way to losing that.
Mm-hmm.
Amazingly true, Felipe. I'm going to give you concrete examples so that you guys understand completely. In the last 2 months, I fired 50% of my company. In the last weekend, I actually created a whole Cloud Code plugin to automate this whole podcast, including a browser agent. StreamYard doesn't have an API. How do we do it? Substack doesn't have an API. How do we handle that? Everything. I mean, and honestly, at this point in time, I'm just figuring out why to keep people, and that's just wrong. I get your point, but it's just becoming so much better in the sense to send personalized emails, even. So that's number two fact. Number three fact is that at some what you suggested, so firing people is true. Startups are at the best. The third thing that you said, that people are still learning Chat GPT, that was 2 years ago. AI is not in a bubble. It is that humans are in a bubble, and they will understand at some point in time that the human bubble is going to pop because of AI. And that's where people don't understand. I don't like the word AI bubble. I like human bubble, because again, I want to repeat what Sundar Pichai said recently on New York Times, is that humans are not evolved to actually gather this much information so fast. As a matter of fact, I mean, we are very transparent. There's a prayer that I was taught as a young kid, and it's called Rabbi Zidni Ilma. And the idea behind it was, "Oh Lord, increase me against the overpowering knowledge." So it wasn't say, "Don't increase my knowledge." It was, increase me in a way that the overpowering of knowledge, I can adapt to it. And that is a prayer that I was taught. And I always used to understand, what the hell does that mean? And now I understand what that means. So, and the last point that you talked about, AI and quantum. So I just want to give a little bit of background to make it easy. So the way AI works is that it is all what we call probabilistic. And as a matter of fact, if you look at the engine, it's called back propagation, and then you make forward predictions. And it is always probabilistic. It is never deterministic. When the word deterministic is used, you mean 0 and 1. The way the computers work, non-quantum computers, is actually quite deterministic. It's zeros and ones. It is never probabilistic. So what it does is that it, the engine works. The minute you put AI in a quantum computer, by the definition, quantum computer itself is also a little probabilistic. It is not 0 and 1. It is everything between 0 and 1. Now, when those two combine, you unleash, as Harvey says sometimes, and me say, an antichrist. No offense, because at that point in time, you will get to AGI. If you, again, review Demis, the founder of DeepMind that was acquired by Google, he adjusted his prediction for AGI from 2035 to 2030, or maybe sooner. And one of the reasons that he has actually explained is the faster we are moving towards quantum computing, because the layer between the quantum computing and the regular computing, because the problem really is not the quantum computing, it is working now. The question is, how do we push it into our integration layer to regular computing and show the results? That gap is closing faster, again, because of AI. So it is an interesting flywheel cycle. And lastly, again, just want to reiterate that the flywheel cycle is insane. It is going too much in that. So Felipe, now I understand that you have an amazing industry experience, 30 years, and now you are actually at conferences, meeting future leaders, giving talks with Harvey and everything. I want to go back to your experience, that how you have seen the healthcare side, but how the pharma side and the chemical side is changing in the age of AI, given that you have old contacts that are probably talking to you. Because I don't get a lot of information on, I do follow pharma, but chemical is completely out. And given that, alpha protein fold, given that we actually have these new biologics and everything coming, what are your thoughts, and when did that flywheel going to go into effect?
Yes, of course, a very, very interesting question, because again, I think the key point behind your question is also when is the timing. Because I said most of the things are accelerating, but in some space you are still not accelerating. We don't see it. And I think we have sometimes to understand probably also the whole dynamic of those industries. You see, as I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was in Montenegro, and I'm also one of those guys saying, the sick care system is not healthcare, the system is broken and all the kind of things. So maybe if we stop really and think about it, in many places, the healthcare system is not broken, is working exactly as designed. You see, and then that's a big challenge, because for some people it's okay. They make money like it was designed, and I'm not going to say, because, it can be pharma, it can be insurance, can be even hospitals and whatever, So actually, that's what I'm saying. Maybe it's right. It's not healthcare, it's sick care, but for the moment, it's working as designed. And as long as we don't go in that direction, that the design was done, years ago for another era, for another knowledge and whatever, I think it's going to be difficult to change it, and that's for the moment. I'm still advocating, to basically build something in parallel. Let's talk about, Harvey knows I'm also into, I don't like the word anyhow, too, the longevity, because longevity was also misused, like you misuse AI, but basically the next generation medicine, preventative care, because we're running into the wall. We know it. We have an aging population, not enough resources. You even know, even the medical students in the US, in the UK, many countries, 30% of the medical students are not going to start as clinicians. And one of the key reasons, so there are mainly two from what I know. One is the bureaucracy, the paperwork that you mentioned before, because, you don't learn to be a doctor to fill data, to fill forms and data online, And the second one is work-life balance. The younger generation has another view of work-life balance. And I don't want to go there to say who is wrong or right. Was it our generation? Is it their generation? I think even it doesn't help to have the discussion. But the point is, we have to do it differently. The market is different. And again, there is no way that we will have enough resources, in the traditional framework, to have enough doctors, nurses, clinicians for an aging population that needs more treatment. So the only way is to go more to preventative care and health. But the market has not been built, this framework was not built for that. So how do I change that? And I still want to answer your question, because I think one of the key points is, how is pharma going to do into preventative health? Because it's not their business. Their business is to sell pills. And I'm bad now saying something, but it's the reality. 40% of the drugs are not working. And it's not that they are not working in general. They may work on you and not on me, but that is 40% of revenue. A doctor, people like you, doctors, they have, of course, another, objective, you want to cure the people and all that, but if you think money, they make money with something that doesn't work. It could even have a negative impact. It could even hurt them. So, as I said, you're right. How is pharma going to move there? And for the moment, I said, there is a lot of opportunities in pharma, but on the drug discovery side. So, you have companies like In Silico Medicine and others, they have already, discovered some of the first drugs with AI. So for the moment, it's still in their old model of pharma. They can be quicker, have less waste, but it's still not something about prevention. So I think, on one side we see we need to move into prevention so that people stay healthy longer, And when I talk in some longevity events recently, I pinned a different quote, saying, because somebody said we should move from sick care to seek care. And I said we should move from seek care to seek health. I'm not seeking care. We should seek health. You see, and that's something which is actually not in the gene. So I use it because of longevity, but in the gene of the healthcare system. Healthcare system have not been built, for healthy people, to keep people healthy. Just take an example. What is an EMR? What is an electronic medical record? Is sick care data. There is no healthcare data in it. So the whole thing is kind of doubling the data you need, the information you need, and then come back even to the doctors, to the knowledge. I say all so often, and sorry for the doctors here in the room, because I have a lot of respect, of course, for the work and what you do. But the biggest challenge might maybe not be upskilling, which is already a challenge, because you're so busy, where you get time, to get out when you're overwhelmed and all that. Because I'm lucky going to these conferences, I meet the savvy doctors, but they are doctors, they are in their practice. They don't have, enough time to serve the people and all that, and it's next, like at the border at the immigration, So one of the points you say, most of the time it might even be unlearning. It's basically that what you learned is actually wrong. And I take something maybe simple that people understand easily. Take a dentist, because recently I was also involved with quite some dentists. My generation, when you went to the dentist and you had the pain, one of the first things they did is root canal. Today, they say you should not do the root canal because you're killing everything, basically you're creating more problem than something else. But that's what I learned 20 years ago. So there is stuff like that with medicine that is going to come, that what you learned at school is even wrong, is doing more damage than something else. And that's another point which I think is important because of the technology, AI and some others. We might learn more in the next 10 years than in the last 100 years. So how are we prepared to that speed? And that I'm saying pharma is one example, but again, it's doctors, is many other fields as well, because take an example, whole genome sequencing. Harvey knows the numbers about, how the prices went down and all that, amazing, But for the moment, we might know 10 or 15% of the interpretation of those genes. So there's so much you're still going to discover with that are going to change completely what we have learned, and that's why I'm saying where's the potential, to learn a lot about what is coming. So I said, from a scientific point of view, research and everything, and that's why it's also including pharma, there will be huge changes. But the thing is, as I said at the beginning, some partner in the ecosystem still make a lot of money with the existing way. So take the example back when I said about the 40% of drug. If I find an opportunity for pharma to make more money in prevention, they will agree to get that money on top of the other one, not instead of the other one. So I think that's a challenge, this whole chain management to say, okay, I can make more money, it's more safe, brings more to the patient, but I still have the other one.
You're absolutely true. The biggest blockers, like currently, the data silos exist because of the EHRs. And then one of the issues that they're trying to pull is protecting their way of life, essentially, at the end of the day. And we're going to see that disruption is going to bring in. And unfortunately, as we have seen disruptions in other industries, startups like me basically gets acquired. And that's how the quote unquote, the current hegemons will continue to make more money by acquisitions of different startups, which again is a startup dream as well. So it is a sort of the way of the world. And I understand completely where you're coming from, that one of the biggest blockers in timeline is not just about making the technology faster. It is basically an adoption curve, which is a human problem, as we talked about the human bubble. But more importantly, what you're saying is that it is also a conservative protectionist problem with the current big players in the market. And you brought up in a very interesting point when we were talking about this, and that is a clear distinction between what I call health tech and med tech. Med tech, I believe, is just a conceptually I make it. There's nothing like a definition or anything. When we talk about medtech, it's about all about like pharma, medicine, clinical, etc. But health tech encompasses both the medtech and the wellness tech. So Ed, the question for you, and we have seen this now for the first time, which is interesting as well. We used to use Whoop. And by the way, Harvey, can you show you have a ring and you have like 6 different wellness trackers and everything? So
we are on board. I have Ultrahuman, I have the Ura, I don't have Whoop, I have Polar, but I'm actually testing this stuff to basically compare them and see there are some values which are different and which are additional things.
I have a 7-year-old and a 10-year-old that takes me to the park. So
and I'm not going to argue how important that is. I'm saying it's still one of the things we are losing, and then the link to the nature, maybe even walking barefoot and all that. So, well, I'm not going to argue. You're still good in what you're doing.
So, Ed, make me a connection between wellness tech and med tech, and what Felipe is also saying, that how that connection is important from going from sick care to healthcare. And then finally, the largest, hardest question to you, as usual, I'm not going to make it easy for you, is that how will it impact the revenue cycle, the pricing models, and how the insurance companies are going to adjust to it? Maybe memberships. They're already giving gym memberships. They're going to give you a Whoop or a Google Fit, et cetera, et cetera. Like, paint me a picture between wellness tech and med tech combining. Or what do you think is going to happen? Because this is so freaking confusing, including what I'm saying is the revenue cycle of all of that.
Yeah, well, I think it's funny, as Isla, the dog, she jumps up on the lap and you naturally, like almost genetically, like predisposition to pet her, which we know helps relax not only the dog, but the owner. And that's all sorts of stuff that I don't think AI is going to be able to displace. It's just part of the humanism aspect of it all. And you going out to the yard to play with your kids, and there'll be attempts to replicate all that with artificial means, but I don't think it'll ever have the same soul impact. And Junaid, I will answer your question, but it reminded me also of another scripture which is similar to the one that you grew up on, and that is you can't pour new wine into old wineskins, right? And that's one of the reasons we have signs and symptoms, is to help us learn. So we're getting the new wine, in this case AI, and the wineskins are us, right? And so if you pour new wine into old wineskins, the wine goes bad and the wineskins, they deteriorate, they break, they're not able to receive. And so it's really important that all of us and our listeners, we always work on ourselves, which we all do. Obviously, we're, showing off our, our rings and all that sort of thing. We're trying to keep pace and be learned, and at the same time, temper it with the balance of the human soul. But I always thought I've always lived by that scripture, but it's come to be more meaningful, right, in the age of AI. So yeah, how do you make it all work? And it goes back, and Felipe, covered it pretty well, I think, and that is the alignment of incentives. We just came out with this book. Believe me, this is not a ploy for the book, but it came out last week. It came out last week in Copenhagen. This is Voices of Innovation Europe. And we were trying to uncover that, right? I think we had 25 out of 43 European countries respond, and they're part of the book. And we were trying to uncover, has anyone broken the code, to make it work? And I think by and large, there's a couple exceptions of very small countries that are able to pull it off because of their size and having sort of a socialist framework for medicine that is hard to pull off because there's just not the alignment of the incentives. And we talked about that. It's better to do sick care. You make more money. A health system by itself, like if we stick sort of to the West, a health system by itself can't make this happen because they would go out of business because not everyone else is playing in the same way. And so despite all the rhetoric that we all give, and it's very well meaning, I don't think anyone's being disingenuous, but at the same time, they have to balance, margin and mission to make these sort of things happen. So I think the best thing that can happen is when it's smaller countries, that prove this out, where they have maybe a single system for wellness and can align the incentives. I think that is where we're seeing some progress. And then, then it might be in more regional areas. We attempted it with blue zones, and I don't want to take the time to go into blue zones. People can Google that. But there are examples around the world where communities have gotten together sort of to align incentives. And interestingly, the hospitals are not a big part of it, because as we know, it's all about your environment, your social network, your belief systems, your nutrition. So I almost think what I'm saying is I think it has to prove itself in small cases, which it has with blue zones as a perfect example, but in smaller countries, and then kind of building out that evidence. And then at some point, we are going to need bold leaders who are willing to take a stance. Much like I just think of Kennedy, about, landing men on the moon, or Martin Luther King Jr. about, freedom for everyone. We need a bold leader, I think, that's going to get out there and say, we're going to do it this way and make it happen. And it'll be painful. None of these things that I just cited as examples were easy to do, but they were done. And we just need that bold visionary leadership and someone to say, this is what we're doing. We're going to make it happen. And, it's not going to be perfect. But I think that's what it's going to take, because nothing's going to change unless someone takes bold stance.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot about we still working in silos, and I'm not talking just medicine. We have the specialists and all that, and the coordination is, but the whole ecosystem is like that, and everyone, and again, a lot of them make money. So why should they change it? So I give you other concrete example. I'm also I like a storyteller, but stories that I have seen myself. So 1 month ago, I was invited to a big hospital in Dubai because, one of my friends became an innovation manager there. And, while coming, she wanted to show me, a hyperbariatric chamber, things like that, which, of course, are probably still more used for real medical solutions and all that than just for longevity topics. But she was surprised when she joined the company that they had the hyperbariatric chamber. But I had a coffee with her and the hospital manager, and we came to the topic about AI for radiology. AI for radiology, there are solutions out there since years. But in the reality, if you go onto the ground, you still don't find it in every hospital and things like that. So this manager, which is not a doctor, but a hospital manager, having his incentive, he said, Philip, I will have to invest in AI for healthcare, but I still have my radiologists and my nurses. So it's a simple economic stuff. For him, there is no added value. It's just an additional cost, because the real added value might be better diagnosis and all that, but on a quick win, it's not a number for him. So and that I'm saying, we need also to get the whole ecosystem involved and talking together. Recently I was at another event where there was this topic, do we still need radiology? And, there are some top guys in the US saying we should not teach radiology anymore in the medical school. And I'm a believer of that as well. I have glasses. My eyes are not good. AI is much better, in recognizing this stuff. And recently I had discussion with the radiologist, who said, yeah, but look, if a surgeon send a patient to the radiologist, they look for, lung cancer. So the AI is going to look at the lung cancer. But the radiologist will look at the bigger picture and might see something else. And I said, sorry to say the word, that is bullshit. If I tell AI to look at everything, AI will look at more and find more things. But we are still entertaining this nasty competition between AI and doctors. So I make a shortcut, and I may be harsh with it, but I say maybe I don't need the radiologist and keep AI, but the nurse I still need, because who is going to prepare the patient, who is going to do all that? And that's what I'm saying, we have to review the existing system, but you cannot do that if you don't involve the player. If you just say to somebody, I don't need you, we build a wall. We don't build, a real openness and solutions.
Jimmy, what do you think of that statement? What do you think? Should we replace radiology and forget about radiologists? And like he just said, I really want to know what you think of that one.
So number one, again, as he suggested very beautifully, actually, is differentiating between task and a job. The tasks of radiologists, identifying a cancer, identifying a lesion, differentiating, sizing of one cancer to another cancer. All of these tasks of a radiologist will be gone because of AI. But the job of the radiologist is not going to go away. And not to mention, we actually need 190,000 more radiologists to just cover the current position. So clearly we need to upscale our current radiologists to do the job they were intended to do and optimize their task as much as we do with AI. So we are definitely not going to need too many radiologists, but again, we also need new interventional radiologists for pain treatment, these wellness things. We are getting new treatments with stem cell injections and biologics and these wellness therapies that Ed keeps talking about, to actually be more sophisticated and employed just from the wellness part to bring into medical and health part. And that combination and that jobs are going to evolve as well. So we're not going to replace radiologists with the current demand, actually. But what we are going to do in the future is replace a lot of 80 to 90% of their tasks, and very quickly, actually, within a year or two, Harvey. But the job replacement is going to be harder in terms of task replacement. I think it's very important that people understand that. Unless, of course, 3 years down the line, we have significant update, and I don't know how the AI is going to move forward, but I built an AI. It's going to, by the way, release chest X-ray. We did one. We actually filed for FDA. Now we're thinking, should we pull the application because it was doing like 4, pathologies, and now we already built one that actually does 22 pathologies and writes a draft. Now FDA is behind, so that I can push it to FDA. So it's just kind of like an odd situation, by the way, Harvey. But long story short, I think we need to differentiate between job and task, and I think tasks are going away. Jobs may persist depending, again, how fast things go forward and moving forward. Which brings a question back to you, Harvey. You're looking at deploying data centers in space, which are gonna basically is amazing, because some of the things people don't understand how intelligence works. Intelligence in AI works is basically, how did you basically make an intelligent model? What they have done is that they actually do increase the parameters. And what that means is that they do a lot of recursive thinking on the back end while they're modeling the actual model itself. So it's still a word filler, but the difference is that the intelligence has gone so much that it can recursively do this. And that's very important in building and training new models with a new consistent flow of data. And that's why you're seeing the flywheel going faster and faster, right? It's Flash 2.5 to Flash 3.1 to Flash 3.5 from Google. Same thing with Opus and Sonnet. Why the flywheel is going faster and faster is because their training data set is becoming more robust, and they basically have a pipeline for improving things. Which, Harvey, what do you think? I mean, are we going to be able to just not replace tasks, but maybe jobs? Because you're going to launch a data center in space and then do this recursive high level thinking and bringing more models faster, even faster than today.
Yeah, I want to talk about two things. I'm looking at the comments and people are saying, hey, I don't see a radiologist being replaced, just because big picture, there's more than just reading films. And I agree with that. As far as data centers and data, it's going to change it. I always say this, guys, it's the great shift that's happening. Today, you and I work a certain way, but before AI, we were the way we were trained is not how we practice medicine. The way we started any institution that you work for isn't the way you continue to work. We all pivot, we all remodel, we all change. The only difference is the rate of change now is quicker, it's faster. We're adopting. So with that said, we have to change the tools. And so to your point now to data centers, the fact that the data centers will be quote unquote literally in space in the cloud, and those AI is gathering other types of data from space and processing and allowing us to leverage. Give you a quick example. If the data is collected in space on the weather, our accuracy combined with AI will give us better models than we have today. And Google has actually showed that already. So my point is this: we need to stay humble. We need to learn how to shift, understand this technology, and keep coming to podcasts like this so that we can see things coming. And obviously having guests like today of the future. And I'm going to encourage people, we got like 14 minutes to ask any questions in the comments, because it's kind of rare that we have him on. So we appreciate it.
Can I add something? So first of all, I liked your answer, Junait. You're completely right. I think, and to challenge what I said about I don't need radiologists anymore. I don't need the radiologists of today, which are overwhelmed, which are even not doing their job, which put the 2 lines remarks. So I agree. It's about evolving the job. And I think you're completely right. They might do something different, even more added value. So again, I should correct what I say. I don't need the radiologists of today, which are already overwhelmed. And as you said, you don't have enough. So AI can help in the basic task of them, and they should do something else. Something else being also what you said. What's about this whole wellness, preventative care, and all that, where a radiologist has a role as well. So I agree. It's about that shift. And again, that shift is coming. I think the key challenge, that shift is coming quicker. That before, because again, a radiologist today is also doing something different than 20 years ago, because the technology evolved. So I think it's the same. So I agree. Maybe my comment was wrong. I don't need the radiologist of today. I need another radiologist, other skills where it's much more added value. To the space stuff on hardware, I know we had a lot of discussion. I think it's even something different. We are not thinking enough out of the box at something completely different. What are actually the biggest challenge in AI is infrastructure, energy, and the chips. And we still look how I can get more of the same rather than maybe looking at something completely different. And the space is something completely different. I recently read something, it's still not sure that it works, but something about, in Finland, they already, since quite some time ago, they were storing power with sand. Now they look if they could generate power with sand. And I'm just trying to say, if you can do that rather than lithium or something else, and that's what I'm saying, we just look to find where can I find more lithium rather than look at something different. And that's why I'm a big fan of Harvey, of course, because, to think space, people think you're crazy, but there's we might find something else, something different that could solve one of the actual biggest problems.
You're so right. I mean, it is getting harder to pick up. And this is one last thing before I sign off. It's just, it's insane. I mean, just to give you guys an idea so that you understand what's going on, is that these are I developed a whole complete AI segmentation, AI video, by the way. Harvey, you're going to love this. Chrome extension, PPC manager, etc. And then, these are now coded. Literally, I am, while we're talking here, it's asking me questions about how I'm going to update my website. And then just to let you know that within this Chrome extension, we are at Cloud Code. Can you CLI helper skill tell me sub agents I can use? So I'm not even just using one Cloud Code per se sessions. These are 3 sessions that are going on content generation, AI's IAME, referring physicians, etc. And look at this. They have Codex, which is, this, anti-gravity, and then I have Coder, which runs DeepSeek and Minimax. Because I have to be very careful where I send the data, which it doesn't matter. I mean, all the data is never sent. But do you see this? So within one Cloud Code session, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, I have 5 sub-agents working. Not to mention, of course, these are 5 employees, different. And then, of course, I have 1 session, 2 session, 3 session. So at one point in time, look at this, right? I have 15 employees. Harvey and Ed, are you seeing? Like, do you understand what I'm trying to say? It is first time in my life, and I am like a super learner. That's my superpower personally. I mean, I'm a neurointensivist, a stroke, epilepsy specialist, CEO and CTO of a AI company running signals and symptoms podcast, everything. But this is the first time in my life I've gotten overwhelmed, and it scares the shit out of me. And when people don't keep talking about AI bubble, they're not using AI as I'm using it, as I'm telling you. That I have 15 AI employees at the moment while I'm doing this, asking me questions and figuring things out. So, anyways, what have your thoughts been?
And it will even go one step further, because for the moment you have AI agents working for you, but you will have AI agents managing the AI agents as well.
Okay, that's exactly happening. So Claude Code, which is our super agent, manages all these sub agents, gets information, puts it in, everything. And I've done this beautiful planning system and code plugin system. I just write the feature list. I just write the strategy document, and it takes from all my code, develops an implementation spec strategy, and develops a whole module. My 5 different developers are unable to keep up with the phase, because I had to sit there. It took me 2 months, don't get me wrong, to develop a system, but then to propagating it. So that's my last question of the day, and to the audiences as well. I understand that people, again, reminder, it is not the AI bubble, this is a human bubble. I'm telling you that I had to fire people who were not able to catch up. And honestly, are humans truly able to catch up or not? And then what are your thoughts? Is it getting overwhelming? Is it getting too scary? I'm going to start with Felipe, and then Ed, and then we'll close with Harvey today.
I think for me, yes and no, because personally, I enjoy it. I love it. I have more fun. Officially, I'm on early retirement. I never worked as much as now, because I do what I love to do. I have fun in what I'm doing. But I can tell you, recently I was in Davos, and one of my best friends, and I'm not going to put the name here, not putting in trouble, but when we left Davos in the train, he was demolished. He was down, because he talked to some of these, the AGI guys and all that, saying that, we are going to be taken over and all that. And he's very religious. He's a believer, has faith and all that. He was destroyed. And I was laughing. I don't care, I'm happy if I have less work, I do something else. That I'm saying, I'm on early retirement and I never worked as much as now, but I'm doing what I love to do. You can go with the kids to the park and all that stuff. That I'm saying, if it's done well, we can become better human, because not everybody is loving 100% of the jobs they're doing every day. It's a pain. We do it to make money and all that kind of things. So, if we can choose what you can do, I still think as a human, there's a lot of things you can do. So that's I'm saying, I'm a humanist. I meet people in person. I probably met half of the people in my LinkedIn network are people I met in person. And that's what I'm proud of. I'm refusing some jobs, if I cannot be on site and meeting the people and touch physical people.
So true. Again, Ed, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I had this interesting conversation with a future guest of ours, Dr. Human Rashidi. He's leading AI at UPMC, University of Pittsburgh. And I was kind of surprised, but I was jumping for joy when he was talking about this topic specifically. And even though he's like this great AI leader, like all of you, he also was emphasizing sort of the humanist aspect of everything and how they try, as they're responsible for training at Pitt and UPMC and things like that, they keep that human side. Here's my only sort of additional thought around that, and that is because I get this feedback all the time. And yeah, but you're different, and that's what people would say to you. Like Junaid, when you're talking about how you've got all these AI agents working for you, and we're not an AI bubble, we're doing all these crazy things, but it's a very select few of us that are doing these crazy things, and we just have to be careful that we don't create even a bigger gap than exists today with people who have access to certain things and people who don't, and so that I'm afraid if not handled carefully, the AI could exasperate that gap. So I think it's up to all of us as leaders to make sure that we're while we're always exploring and pushing boundaries and doing cool new things, that we also make sure that we don't leave people behind and try to help as much as we can. I don't know how to articulate much better. I didn't read the Pope's manifesto that came out over the weekend. Maybe he offered some hope in there. I didn't read it yet, but I think he was kind of trying to say something like that.
Harvey, Ed called me crazy, and I'm deeply, deeply sad. I'm just messing with you. But you're right. I mean, okay, in all honesty, I did not want to fire people. I did not want to do this, but it is insane. I mean, Harvey is an amazing big investor in my company. How do I come and tell him that this is the productivity of? Do you understand? Like, do you understand? I have a fiduciary responsibility too. So Harvey,
Harvey, super.
last comments and close for the day.
At the end of the day, guys, as a physician, as a leader in this space, I want to say the following. It's all about how can we leverage our creativity, our humanity, our being, plus AI, using these new tools. And in my case, for humanity, in my case, as a physician, and that creativity is what I want to empower everybody. So to me, these tools means helping people. How can I leverage space? And I really think that is the key for everybody out there. We need to leverage these tools to help us with our daily. I literally just vibe coded this morning a relationship for my contacts, for my family, and it's linked to a whole bunch of information that I have. And then it tells me, hey, you haven't spoken to Junaid in 12.2 days. You guys are working on X. Maybe you should follow up. And Ed is on the list now. And I get this like diagram image of all these people, and then it shows me. So again, I'm leveraging tools to help with my missions.
Thank you so much, Felipe. Thank you, Ed and Harvey, as usual. Grateful to everyone. Eid Mubarak to those who celebrate. See you next week. Thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you. Bye-bye.